Welcome to part 2 of our Nicomachean ethics video lecture. So you'll recall that when we stopped last time, we were talking about the fact that you can't just search for a generically happy life. We have to look specifically for what a happy human life is. And that means that our next step has to be to figure out what human life is at its core. What is essential about being human? So once we figure out what it really means to be human, then we can look for what it means to be a happy human. So we're going to start with the question of the essence of human life. The essence of a thing is what makes that thing what it is. It is the defining feature or the defining features of a thing. When you think about being human, what are the essential elements of being human? What makes a human into a human thing as opposed to some other kind of thing? So one way of thinking about it is clearing away all of the superficial features of a human and thinking about what's left. What is it that makes us into the kinds of things we are? You can imagine a robot that would look exactly like a human being superficially, but lack the essence of humanity, so that superficially it would appear to be human, but it wouldn't really be a human being. For Aristotle, the essence of humanity, the thing that makes humans into the kinds of things that they are, is reason. Reason is a faculty, and a faculty is an inherent power to do something. In this case, the faculty of reason means that you have the power to form judgments, draw inferences, make connections among ideas, contemplate things, make deductions, generalize from examples, come to conclusions. For Aristotle also, he seems to have a slightly broader sense of what the faculty of reason includes in it than our modern day sense. So he also seems to pull in ideas like having a tremendous amount of creativity, maybe even a lot of our more complex emotions into what he means by reason. So for Aristotle, reason is the thing that makes a human into a human. And the idea is you could clear away every other thing about being human, but if you had a creature that had reason, then that thing would count as a human. Now, Aristotle also talks a lot about the fact that we are really deeply social animals. You remember from the very beginning of Book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics, he talks about how important the science of politics is, because politics has to do with the way we organize ourselves as human beings. So being social animals will also be tremendously important to Aristotle's ideas throughout this work. Okay, everyone who is human has reason as their essence. That's what it means for something to be your essence. If you didn't have reason, you wouldn't count as a human. So if you're human, you have reason as your essence. And essence is what makes you the kind of thing that you are. Along with your essence, naturally comes a whole big set of potentials. Potentials are something that are capable of being, but they're not yet in existence. For example, because you're a social animal with the capacity for creativity guided by reason, you have the potential to solve problems. You have the potential to invent ideas or invent stuff. You have the potential to make music or make art. You have the potential to encourage and teach others, etc., etc. That all naturally comes with the fact that you have this faculty of reason. Having that faculty just gives you the possibility of doing all of that stuff. Now, as you know from having lived this long in your life, the fact that people have the potential to do this does not at all mean that they ever use that potential. The fact that you have the faculty of reason doesn't mean that you necessarily use it. But you all have the potential to use it. Okay, and so the next natural step is the actual. And the actual is something that is actually in existence. When you take that potential and use it, you make it actual, that is your essence operating in you, taking you from just a lump of potential and making you into something that is sort of deeply, truly human. Because the reason all your potentials that come along with it isn't just kind of sitting around like a lump in you. It is actually getting taken up and used. So, for example, when you actually do solve a problem, or when you think of a new idea, or when you draw a conclusion, or make music, or encourage somebody else, that is you taking up your potential and making it actual. When you actualize that potential, when you take your potential and use it for something, you are practicing virtue. That's what virtue is to Aristotle. That's your essence operating in you, taking you from just a lump of potential stuff and making you into something that is profoundly human. You're more profoundly human because think of the classic old example of the acorn and the oak tree. The acorn that drops onto the hard pavement and never gets to sprout or do anything is full of potential, but the oak tree is more fully an oak tree. In fact, the acorn in a sense never became an oak tree, right? So similarly with all of your potential, if it just sits there and you never do anything with it, there's a profound sense in which you're not really flourishing into your deepest humanity. And Aristotle puts it like this. He says, virtue is the activity of the soul in accord with reason. And that's what that means. When you take the potential given to you by your reason, which is your essence, and actualize it, make it into something, you are practicing virtue. So let's look at one of the classical virtues just to get an example of how this works. We're talking specifically about courage for this module, so we'll take a look at the classical virtue of courage to see how the virtues are examples of taking the potential given to you by your essence and activating them, putting them into play. So let's think about courage for a second. Most of us nowadays, if we are called upon to exercise the virtue of courage, it's not terribly often that we have to put ourselves physically in a lot of harm's way, depending on your circumstances. A lot of us are more often called upon to take social or economic risks or risks to the way people think about us or the kind of comfort of our day-to-day lives. We're often asked to do something like speak up where it's difficult to speak up. So if you think about courage, the first thing that you need to do to be courageous is to use your reason to assess the circumstances that you're in. You recall from our first slideshow that we're talking about really complex situations with a lot of different contingencies involved. And so when you're in a situation that calls for courage, you're first going to have to just figure out what's going on. And figuring out what's going on is going to pull a lot of your reason into play because you'll have to draw inferences. You will have to analyze the situation. You will have to make deductions, possibly, just to figure out what's going on, what are the potential options available to you, and then what would be the courageous decision in that circumstance. Also, you're drawing upon a lot of your knowledge of human social interactions. So you're also drawing upon yourself as a deeply social animal. So when you're exercising one of the virtues, that is literally you just taking all of that potential sitting around because you've got this essence of reason and grabbing a whole bunch of all of that potential and making use of it, doing something with it. Okay, now when I started this video lecture, we were talking about happiness, and we seem to have gotten a really long way from happiness. In our next video, we will talk about what all this has to do with happiness. Again, before you go on to the next video, make sure you review this one, review your notes, understand what we've gone over at this point, and as always, feel free to contact me at cboyle@contracosta.edu if you have any questions. Thanks, and I will see you for our next lecture video.